White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt brutalized the press during her first appearance in the briefing room. President Trump banned transing the kids, and hundreds of thousands of federal bureaucrats might soon choose to self-deport from Washington. The winds are coming in so fast, I almost cannot keep up. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Illegal aliens are protesting ICE deportations in Dallas by flying foreign flags. Probably not the best look. Kind of undermining their argument, I think. Also, folks, I have a gift for you because the winds are coming in so fast that even my most black-pilled, doom and gloom friends are excited by what's going on. And I feel a little bit bad because during Black Friday and Christmas, I was not in stock on my favorite Mayflower lighter, which is the Zycar single flame lighter. It's got the Mayflower logo on the front, Mayflower in the cool font written on the back. So there you go. It's very cool, especially good for touch-ups on your cigars. So for the next 48 hours, don't say I never did nothing for you. I will be running a very quick sale on the Mayflower Linnea torch lighter by Zycar. Little way for me to say to all of our fans of Mayflower that I'm sorry we didn't have it in time. Single flame, dependable ignition, easy adjustments, really easy adjustments down here. Zycar, you can't beat it. This is my kind of lighter. And I'm going to use this lighter to light my delicious Michael Knowles candle. This is the PSL candle, available at thecandleclub.com. So if you want to get the lighter, you know where to go. You must be 21 years old or older. Some exclusions apply. Karoline Leavitt. I got to put my lighter over here. We're getting so excited, the table's shaking. Karoline Leavitt just had her first press briefing, I guess it seemed more like a vicious beating of the establishment media. A huge change from Karine Jean-Pierre, who'd had the job before. The first announcement that came from the podium was something that I had been advocating for a while and other people had been talking about. And I think we actually broke the news on Don Jr.'s show. And that is that following the 2024 election, which the New York Times and the Washington Post called the podcast election, following this big shift, not just in the voting habits of Americans, but in the media consumption habits of Americans, the establishment media were going to be taken down a notch, and the new media were going to be given a seat at the table.
We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. And you can apply now on our new website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex.
This is really beautiful stuff. I even love that seat, that new media seat, is right up there at the front of the room. This is going to send a message to some of the people in the establishment media. Maybe it's worth even considering removing some of their seats if the establishment media don't start reporting the news honestly. Because in the old days, you'd say, look, the establishment media lie, but they got the eyeballs. That's where the audiences are. And the purpose of the briefing room is to communicate what's going on at the White House to the American people. And the media, that is to say the plural of medium, in between the two, it's the establishment press. That's not really true anymore. The establishment press are having a really hard time getting eyeballs. CNN, it seems to be in free fall right now. MSNBC being spun off. The New York Times, the Washington Post really struggling to adapt. So right now we've got the carrot for the new media. Depending on how things start going, maybe we'll get the stick for the old media too. Just bop them right on the top of the head. So then we get into the issues. And the establishment media come back at Karoline with a rejoinder to the immigration conversation that you often hear from liberals. They'll say, why are you focusing on the illegal aliens from Latin America who are crossing the border? You know, these poor dreamers and refugees seeking a better life. Actually, don't you know, so much of our problem of illegal aliens in the country is just people overstaying their visas. Why are you focusing on the border jumpers? And here is Karoline Leavitt's perfect answer.
Happens to those who've overstayed their visas. That is part of the broken immigration system. In 2023, there was a report by the Biden administration, the Homeland Security Department, that said overstays of visas were 3 times more than usual. Will there be a focus on the overstays for visas as well?
If an individual is overstaying their visa, they are therefore an illegal immigrant residing in this country, and they are subject to deportation.
Love it. Simple. I think usually, I don't know what that reporter was thinking, but usually when people bring up that question, it is as if to imply that we should not deport people or should not focus so much on deporting people who are hopping the border, because the real crisis of illegal immigration are the people who overstay their visas. But Karoline's answer here is, oh, yeah, no, we're going to deport them too. Oh, you're right. Thanks for reminding me. I'm going to add that to my list. Yeah, okay. So we're definitely going to keep deporting all those border crossers, but let's also deport the people who overstay their visas when they fly into this country and land at JFK. Great idea. Then the highlight of the conference yesterday had to do with foreign affairs. It was part and parcel of President Trump's freeze on a lot of federal spending. And this spending that they focused on specifically had to do with the Middle East, specifically with Gaza, specifically with how many condoms you are paying for in Gaza.
Just during this pause, DOJ and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. DOJ and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
$50 million to fund condoms in Gaza. You know, I'm a Catholic. I don't want us to fund condoms in America. Why are we funding condoms in Gaza to the tune of $50 million? Also, I thought we were told that what's going on in Gaza is a humanitarian disaster, one of the worst we've ever seen. Condoms is the number one thing they need? Not food, water, condoms, huh? Totally insane. And this is the kind of specificity that we need. Really good stuff from the press secretary. This is what we need from the whole Trump administration. And I think we're getting it. We need specificity. We need to paint a picture. This was the point I made yesterday on the show. President Trump's persistent focus on face tattoos. I myself have been focusing on the face tattoos of the illegal aliens for many months now. And the reason for that is, one, it conveys the truth, but two, it paints a picture of reality. The libs want to pretend that illegal immigration is about doe-eyed little dreamers and sweet little abuelas making paella who are being ripped out of their homes by mean, cruel ICE agents. That's not what's going on. What's going on is that Mexican gangsters who worship Satan in MS-13 with face tattoos, who rape women, who traffic women, who poison Americans with, who murder people, who do all sorts of crazy, crazy, evil stuff, they are being arrested and deported. That's real illegal immigration, okay? That's real Tom Homan deportation, ICE enforcement. It's the face tattooed monsters. And the same thing is true here. When we're talking about cutting federal spending, the libs want to say, well, you're going to cut, terminally ill children's Medicaid funding and, poor old widows are not going to be able to eat anymore because of Donald Trump. And none of that is true. You know the kind of funding that Trump is cutting? $50 million worth of condoms in Gaza. That's what he's cutting, okay? And so the specificity is the key here. People cannot really conceptualize abstract numbers. Most people can't really fathom the difference between 1 million and 1 billion and 1 trillion. Orders of magnitude just elude us. It's difficult in our finite brains. But we sure can picture condoms in the Middle East, okay? In the war zone, the worst supposed humanitarian crisis ever. We can picture that kind of frivolous, wasteful spending. That's where the focus has to be. Karoline Leavitt obviously has this lesson in spades. I think President Trump obviously has it in spades. The whole administration really doing an excellent job communicating. Now, speaking of our health, speaking of being vibrant and vigorous, I want to tell you about Live Good supplements. Go to livegood.com/Michael. I have recently discovered something that is a complete game changer, and it is a company called Live Good. Live Good is doing something revolutionary in the supplement industry by offering premium quality products without ridiculous markups. They have an extreme commitment to quality. They've got an incredible team of natural health experts creating these formulas. And best part is they cut out the middleman, so they're able to offer them at the lowest prices you will find anywhere. The ones that I've been using in particular are the essential oils and the hydration pack. I got the hydration pack just before we were heading to DC for the inauguration parties, and it could be helpful, is all I'm saying. And the essential oils, you know me, I like a nice fragrance, the candles, the stogies, and this is just the beginning. They've got everything from organic super greens and multivitamins to collagen, weight loss products, even skincare, all top quality stuff at prices that will not break the bank. There is a reason that they're the fastest growing supplement brand out there with over 1.5 million satisfied customers. Are you ready to make the switch and start saving? Well, right now, use our link, get an additional 10% off your first order on top of the already low prices. livegood.com/Michael, 10% off your order, livegood.com/Michael. Do not miss out on this opportunity. Beyond the great press beating that took place yesterday, President Trump also, with the stroke of his pen, banned transing the kids. This is something we on the right have been talking about and advocating for ad nauseum for many years. My very first speaking tour, I think it was my first, might have been my second, but it was years and years ago, 2017, 2018, was called Men Are Not Women and Other Uncomfortable Truths. That was one of my first two YAF speaking tours. I was not the first conservative to talk about it. Then what? A year or two later, Matt had that major movie, one of the biggest documentaries ever, What is a Woman? Then we've had all of these hyper-focused campaigns just saying this is evil. The castration of kids, the transing, it's insane. It's contrary to human nature. We got to stop it. And no one would stop it. Certainly not at the federal level until yesterday. Quote, "Today it was my great honor," writes President Trump, "to sign an executive order banning the chemical castration and medical mutilation of innocent children in the United States of America. Our nation will no longer fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support so-called gender-affirming care, which has already ruined far too many precious lives. My order directs agencies to use every available means to cut off federal financial participation in institutions which seek to provide these barbaric medical procedures that should never have been allowed to take place." This is really, really great. There's a little ambiguity here, though, because at the top he says, we're going to ban the chemical castration and medical mutilation of innocent children. But then in the next sentence, our nation will no longer support so-called, quote, gender-affirming care. But gender-affirming care, so-called, which is just mutilation and cross-sex hormones and is just this way to turn people into grotesque caricatures of the opposite sex without any scientific or certainly without any philosophic or anthropological justification. That occurs for all ages. Gender-affirming care could be given to an 8-year-old just as well as to an 80-year-old. President Trump in the first part, he says we're going to stop doing it to little kids. But in the second part, he says we're not going to do gender-affirming care. So it's a little ambiguous. This was the point of my CPAC speech a couple years ago that got a lot of attention from the left, but I wasn't trying to be needlessly provocative. I was just following the idea to its logical conclusion. I said, either transgenderism is true or it's not. Either a man can become a woman or he can't. If a man can become a woman, then we should trans the kids because that's just how human nature works and we should get them before puberty, I guess. If a man can't become a woman, then we shouldn't trans anybody because that's not how human nature works. So we shouldn't trans the kids, we shouldn't trans the adults, we shouldn't trans any of these people, and we should get them the help that they need. You can see that ambiguity in President Trump's Truth Social post. You can see that tension there. So this is a huge win, really important. It's sad that we've fallen to such lows as a country that we have to celebrate not castrating little kids because of the ignorance of adults. But we got to go further than that. It actually doesn't make sense to ban transing kids, but not ban transing adults. Kids don't have a different type of nature than adults do. It's not that little boys can't become little girls, but grown men can become grown women. That doesn't make any sense. So we got to see, we're going to follow this idea to its logical conclusion. Now it's up to the federal agencies. I hope they do the right thing. At the very least, we can celebrate that not transing the kids anymore is the mainstream position. There is a third great thing that happened yesterday that not nearly as many people are talking about, but in some ways it could be the most consequential of all of the initiatives. President Trump is offering federal workers a buyout. The White House issued a memo yesterday offering to pay federal workers, bureaucrats, who do not want to return to the office through September 30th. What's today? It's January 29th. They're going to pay them through September 30th. They're going to give them 8 months of pay as long as those federal workers resign by February 6th. Now, according to a senior administration official talking to Axios, the government-wide email being sent today is to make sure that all federal workers are on board with the new administration's plan to have federal employees in office and adhering to higher standards. We are 5 years past COVID, and just 6% of federal employees work full-time in office. Think about that number. 6% of employees work full-time. When COVID sent everybody home, I heeded my boss's demands. I went home. I did my show at home. I think 1 or 2 days. Within about 36 hours, I was back in the office. I couldn't take it anymore. I said, I got to be back in the office. I'm losing my mind. I can't get work done at home. I was in a 1-bedroom apartment at the time we didn't have kids yet though. And I said, I got to get back. I called Jeremy. I said, I'm coming back to the office. He said, I'm already back. He was back the next day. Okay. We're 5 years later. 6% of federal workers are back in the office. So what Trump is saying, look, we're going to give you 8 months pay. We're going to give you most of a year's pay. And it's going to save us so much money because you federal bureaucrats are wasting so much of our money right now. 1, because you're not in the office working. 2, because when you are working, you're undermining our administration, a lot of you. So we'll just buy you out. This is the advantage of having a businessman as president. A career politician would not think about this. A businessman would. This kind of thing happens a lot in business. If a company hits a downturn, you got to trim away some of the fat. You offer people buyouts. It's going to cost you some money up front, but you're going to trim away a lot of that fat. There's going to be a long-term advantage. The people who are going to jump at those buyouts are the kind of people that you really don't want working at your company long-term. Okay, fine. Cost me a little bit of money now. It's going to save me a lot of money in the long run. The White House expects 5 to 10% of federal employees to accept this offer. That means potentially hundreds of thousands of people. I said 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I said on this show that the president typically replaces, 4,000 to 5,000 people in an administration. Those are the appointees, the people who churn with the new administration. In order to have any effect on the federal bureaucracy, you would have to replace 40,000 to 50,000 people. The actual federal bureaucracy is about 2 million people or more. Okay, we're talk about not being able to conceive of large numbers. That is a huge number that most Americans can't think of. In one fell swoop, President Trump might get rid of hundreds of thousands of federal bureaucrats, trim a lot of fat, make the bureaucracy a lot easier to manage. And he's doing it by making people happy. This is the other thing. He's not just going in and saying, you're fired. You're fired, middle manager at the Office of Management and Budget. He's not saying that. He's saying, hey, I'll give you 8 months pay for free. You want that? You the kind of person who wants that? Okay, good. See you later. Okay, good job. You have 8 months to find a new job. And you're going to have a cushy landing. For the rest of you who want to stick around, you're not going to take 8 months free. You're going to work hard. You're going to come back to the office, and you're going to be on board with my political program. It's so brilliant. This is the carrot and the stick. And people like to portray this caricature of Trump that he's all stick. He's all insult and yelling and screaming and taking people's security clearance. But he's not. He also knows how to work the incentives. This is a really, really great incentive. Okay, one last big W that I want to talk about from yesterday. There's a new White House logo. I noticed this on one of the memoranda that was coming out of the White House. I said, it looks like they changed the logo. Symbols matter. Most people are going to totally overlook this. But, I really focus on symbols a lot. I wrote a whole book about symbols. They called Speechless, Controlling Words, Controlling Minds, because the symbols tell you something about what is symbolized. The signs tell you about something that is signified. How we use symbols controls how we perceive the world, and it controls how we act. What's the difference here? In the old, every administration just about tweaks the White House logo a little bit. In the old one, in the Biden administration, it was navy blue on white, and it was very simplified. It was a little bit more modern, a little bit more sleek image of the White House. Not too many ornaments, not too many adornments, just a really basic drawing of the White House with the flag on top that didn't even have the distinctions of the American flag. It was just a white banner. But you knew, if you knew it's an American flag. Okay. And then relatively small square print for the White House underneath that Washington. The new one, the new Trump logo. Much more ornate, much more detailed to give you a look at what the White House really looks like. You're seeing some of the ornamentation, some of the finishes around the White House door and windows. You're seeing many more little lines, and it just captures a little bit more of the classical architecture of the White House. Then the American flag is in red, white, and blue, so it really pops on the darker blue standard. It's a little bit more stark. And then the White House font is bigger. It's taller. It's not as square. It's all caps, just like the old one, but it's taller. And Washington is removed from the logo. There's a lot going on here. One is a return to classical architecture, a return to beauty, a return to not just the style that initially defined our nation's capital, but a return to the classics more broadly. This is obviously a deeply conservative kind of image of the White House. Then that stark focus on America. America's not just, we don't just have a flag like every other flag, indistinguishable from all of them. America's not just a nation like every other nation, indistinguishable from them. America's America, and it's going to pop, and it's going to be a little bit different. Then the White House logo, it's much taller. It's imperial almost. It's imposing. It's big and tall and grand. Just like you walk into the Supreme Court, it's a big, tall, grand building. You walk into an old Beaux-Arts or neoclassical train station or library. It's big, it's tall, it's imposing. You feel the weight of history. You feel a sense that there is a kind of justice above you. It's not all just the little machinations of tiny little people running around like rats. That's what you get from the increased height of the font, the White House. And then notice there's no Washington. We are decentering the role of the Washington bureaucrats here. Washington didn't elect Donald Trump. You elected Donald Trump throughout America. And yet you have this seeming paradox. It's big, it's imperious, it's grand, it's detailed, it's all of these things, but it's not just about Washington. It's about America, the nation. The nation that is actually the global empire, that is a big power, and that is going to draw on her classical influences, going to draw on her roots to project that power out and distinguish ourselves from the rest of the nations. I don't think I'm reading too deeply into this. You don't just change a logo on a whim, okay? I don't think Donald Trump was just sketching this on a pad. Very smart people spent a long time making that new logo to be distinct from the old logo, because they want the Trump administration to be distinct from the Biden administration, because they want this vision of America to be distinct from the old vision of America. And every change I see here seems to signify a change for the better. You know, folks, one of my absolute favorite things I do is sit down for very long conversations with people that you might never have heard of, people who are not just talking about the latest quarterly earnings report or the latest immigration numbers, people who are talking about really deep, sometimes esoteric things, like a man I just sat down with, Blake Healy. Would you freak out if someone said that they saw an angel or a demon standing right behind you? Well, that's what happened to me when I sat down with Blake, the author of the best-selling book, The Veil, who claims to be able to see things in the spiritual world. Take a listen.
I'd see angels and demons in about equal measure. There was this sense of separation. And even though I could identify how that's something that might be scary, there wasn't any sense of immediate danger. I looked up, and instead of my mom, I saw this kind of shadow. As soon as I looked at it, it's kind of slunked into the crack, walked around to the edge of my bed. It kind of had these milky white eyes. Its eyes flashed, and I felt this overwhelming sense of fear. Absolute panic was just going through my body. It happened night after night after night for 3.5 years.
You have this question, which is, am I a highly functioning schizophrenic?
They talked to me about this concept that I hadn't heard of before, that they called seeing in the spirit. Something in that recipe of expanding the options from either I'm going crazy or the devil's decided to ruin my life, to this third option of maybe I have a gift that I just haven't learned how to manage yet.
This is your daily experience.
It is.
Do you see these things now, like right now?
While we're talking at this very moment.
What do you see?
Right now, I can see your personal angel standing right behind you, just behind your left shoulder.
Watch the full episode now. Figure out if you believe him. Do you believe him? Check it out on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. Do not forget to subscribe for the ad-free version on DailyWire Plus. Now, speaking of symbols, ICE is performing raids in cities around America to deport all of the face-tattooed gangsters. Illegal aliens are going out and protesting the ICE raids. And this is really, it shows you what an unserious country the Democrats and the squish Republicans have made us. There was a time in this country where if you were here illegally, you would not show your face if a police officer were around. You would hide in the corners because you don't want to be deported. Now, these people, these entitled people, show up, flaunt their crimes in front of the cops, and they have the audacity to wave Mexican flags. The argument for not deporting some of these illegal aliens is, oh, they've been here for a long time. Oh, some of them came over before they were 18. They didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. Oh, they did this. Oh, they did that. They're more American than you are, by golly. They're as American as apple pie. Well, if they were as American as apple pie, they probably wouldn't be waving Mexican flags. Why are they waving Mexican flags? You know, half my family came here on the Mayflower, which is why we have delicious Mayflower cigars. But the other half of my family came over on a sardine boat practically from Italy. And you know what happened when they came from Italy? They didn't wave Italian flags. They waved American flags. And they did everything they could to learn English and to be English and to raise their children as Americans and to assimilate. That's what they wanted to do. In part because they loved America and they loved the idea of America and they wanted to be part of America. And also because they knew they couldn't succeed if they didn't become Americans. These people, this is ridiculous. There are plenty of immigrants who do assimilate and do want to be part of America, but these guys don't. You like Mexico so much? Hey, here's the door, buddy. You know, they're really undermining their own argument. I mean, listen to these people. Screeching, screaming. How many Mexican flags are there? Like a dozen? Holding signs? These people should be uniformly rounded up and thrown out of the country. All of them. The audacity to protest American law enforcement officers? Screeching about the American president? Get him out of here, man. Send them to El Salvador. I don't know where. I guess these people are from Mexico. A lot of them are waving Mexican flags, but who knows where? I don't really care where they're from. Send them to El Salvador. Let Nayib Bukele take care of them. I think he'll talk some sense into them. This is not great optics for the anti-deportation crowd. So just as we say on the Republican side, you got to keep the focus on the Haitian gangsters saying, thanks, Obama, I hate you, Donald Trump, while they're being arrested. You got to keep the focus on the face tattooed guys. You got to keep the focus on the murderers and the rapists and the drug dealers and the criminals. So too, you got to keep your focus on these guys. If this is the best that the pro-amnesty, pro-open borders crowd has to offer, a bunch of screeching, vulgar foreigners waving foreign flags, mocking law enforcement to their faces, that's going to really move public opinion. And the irony is, it's not only going to move public opinion of white guys and black guys and people born in America, that's going to bolster and continue to move public opinion of legal immigrants and Hispanics who love this country. No coincidence that President Trump won almost half the Hispanic vote this cycle. Even as and he did very well with the Hispanic vote actually in 2016 as well, even though we were told he was going to turn off because any reasonable immigrant does not want to be associated with those people. I don't know how Tom Homan's looking at it, but I'm looking at those people. I'm saying, oh, those are some nice targets. Great. Hey, fellas, we got them. Go over there, get them. Now, speaking of criminals, a Florida Democrat official has been arrested for possession of child and for trying to meet a 9-year-old boy for abuse. This is the Orange County Democrat Party treasurer. He's also the president of Rainbow Democrats, a LGBT Democrat activist group. 39 years old. He's a Democrat National Committee delegate, self-professed member of the LGBT community. So this is not just some random Palookaville, registered Democrat Party member. This is a guy who is pretty seriously involved with the Democratic Party at the local level and on the national level. He's a DNC delegate. What was the Rainbow Democrats' response to this arrest? Not just that he was possessing child, horrific enough. He was trying to meet a 9-year-old boy. Just turned out the 9-year-old boy he was going to meet was a law enforcement officer. The Rainbow Democrats say the Rainbow Democrats are shocked to hear about the allegations. They're shocked. The Orange County Democrats say, we are deeply appalled and horrified by the news. They're horrified. They're appalled. They're shocked. Are you really that shocked? I'm not that shocked. I sometimes say it's always the ones you most expect. Why are you shocked here? This guy makes weird sex stuff most of his identity. That's most of his identity. It's not just that he's a guy who has deviant sexual views or desires. It's not that this guy, he's a little light in the loafers. He's not interested in women, but he's a confirmed bachelor. He's not going to make a big deal. This is a guy whose whole identity is, I'm into weird sex stuff. I promote weird sex stuff in public. I want everyone to hear about how much I love weird sex stuff, and I want weird sex stuff to be part of the Democratic National platform. Is it any surprise that guy's into like really, really weird sex stuff? That's not surprising to me at all. In a way, it would be surprising if the guy who made sex his whole identity were just, leave it to Beaver, father knows best when he gets home at night. That would be more surprising to me. This is why, by the way, we really need to discourage all of the pride parades and Pride Month and pride logos and symbols and all this stuff in our culture. It's not to be cruel to people who have aberrant desires or, the sort of low voltage gays, the ones who they're kind of minding their own business. And that sort of thing has always existed for all of human history. It's a fallen world. Things get a little quirky. Very few people have a problem with that. No one wants to send the purity police around to people's homes. But it is weird to normalize and mainstream increasingly aberrant, weird sexual views. Certainly on Main Street, where people's grandmothers and kids have to go see it, or else have to cede the public square to wackos for a whole month. The most hardcore, bizarre, politically active wackos. We just need to. It's one thing to say, hey, all right, some people are a little quirky. They're going to go do their own thing. Okay, whatever. But I don't know. It's a big red flag. We're talking about a lot of flags: the Mexican flag, the American flag, the rainbow flag. If you are making the rainbow flag, the weird sex flag, your identity, that's a red flag. And people should not be surprised if you get caught doing really, really wicked things. Speaking of technology, there is an ad that was served to me on Instagram. And I just thought nothing of it. I said, I didn't even really understand what the ad was. And then I saw it start to pop up on social media elsewhere. And I said, I guess this is a real thing that's going around. It was an advertisement for a ring that you would give your wife or that you would buy for yourself if you had undergone IVF. And it was a ring that would include in the jewelry the embryos of the babies that you didn't want. But even to say embryos of the babies, it doesn't make sense because an embryo is a baby. It's not. It would include your kids that you chose not to have. Because when people do IVF, when they go through this process, many of them don't think about it. They don't really understand what they're getting into. To do IVF, you have to, one, usually commit an action that is intrinsically disordered and grave to procure the raw materials. Then scientists in the lab mix up the sperm and the egg, and they create little babies. And sometimes they pick the wrong sperm and the wrong egg. Sometimes they make babies with mothers and fathers who've never met each other before, accidentally, oopsie daisy. Sometimes they implant babies and the wrong mother, and there are lawsuits about this. But even when it goes right, they make a lot of little babies, and then 1 or 2 babies maybe take, and the rest are just frozen indefinitely or killed, destroyed. Well, this jewelry company says, you know what you can do? You can put them in jewelry and wear your kids' cadavers around on your finger all day. Nikola Tesla is reported to have said, upon creating a remote control boat that could be used for explosives, said, you might live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension. I think that's what we're seeing. This is really, really horrifying. However, I've noticed and predicted that most everyone was in favor of IVF and surrogacy. Finding a woman, purchasing her eggs, renting the womb of another woman, then procuring a baby, maybe killing the baby if the baby had Down syndrome or so. This is even in some of the surrogacy contracts. If the baby has Down syndrome or whatever, they're going to abort the baby. They're going to kill it. They don't want a baby who has any form of mental retardation or anything like that. Maybe they'll pick for the sex. They don't want a girl. They do want a boy, whatever. But then you get the baby and everyone's going to love it. Everyone obviously loves the baby because the baby's intrinsically good. But everyone's going to love the idea of IVF because it makes more babies. And there were some groups that said, I don't know. The Catholic Church has been clear on this from the beginning. The Southern Baptists recently just came out and said, actually, there's something a little wrong about this. Because you're depriving the baby of the only mother he's ever known. By the way, there's a study on this that came out, I think it was 2015, which showed that babies who are born via surrogacy are much more likely to have emotional problems by the age of 7, anxiety, depression, aggressiveness, antisocial behavior. So surrogacy alone creates a lot of problems for kids, but there are all these other bioethical implications of it. And I thought it's going to take people a long time to figure out this novel bioethical question. And you're starting to see that turn. I think this kind of stuff, that's going to drive it home. I'm actually in favor of this kind of advertisement, not the product, but this advertisement. Because it's very easy to put IVF out of your mind. You say, oh yeah, well, there's some babies frozen forever in a freezer. Oh yeah, okay, it's no big deal, whatever. I'm going to keep it out of sight, out of mind. At least I have my kid who's here. If you've got to consider what that ring is, you've got to look at it every single day, I think it drives home the reality. And my prediction is, I know it's a minority view right now, I think as the ethical implications of IVF and surrogacy become clear, public opinion will turn against it. In much the same way as we've seen with issues like late-term abortion. I think that's what's going to happen. In the long run, I think you're beginning to see it happen already. Just ask the Southern Baptists. Now, folks, the establishment media, they're broken. They're corrupt. They don't report the news. They curate the news to fit their agenda. Americans are finished with it. That is why the Daily Wire exists. We are not here to follow the narrative. We are here to crush the narrative. Our reporters go where the truth is, no matter how inconvenient it may be for the powerful. We are not stopping there. We're creating the entertainment Hollywood won't. Bold movies, fearless docs, shows that fight back against the cultural rot. And here's the thing, none of that happens without you. The fight for truth and culture starts with your support. Join the movement today at dailywire.com/subscribe. Do not sit on the sidelines. Be part of the revolution. My favorite comment yesterday is from Sage Out of Nowhere. It says, why is she sad about people having to leave a white supremacist country? That's a good point. Actually, Alex Rosen, who has all of this content where he catches child abusers and catches them online and he goes and films them and stuff. He had this whole bit. He said, we have to think of the children, all these poor immigrant children who are in this terribly racist country. To help the children, we have to get them back to Mexico and out of this evil, racist, white supremacist country. And of course, that's true. Of course, that's what the libs say. They say, America is evil and terrible and racist, and it's oppressive to everyone, especially brown people. And that's why we need to let all the brown people in. We have to let them stay here. What? Seems like a contradiction. Speaking of crimes, did Diddy have Tupac murdered? I want to know. The people want to know. Did Diddy did it? Did Diddy do that thing? Did Diddy have Tupac murdered? There's a story, a little far afield of our political discussion. Diddy was reportedly named 47 times in Tupac murder suspect's secret cop interview and accused of ordering a hit on the rapper over a diss track. Diddy reportedly said, according to new court documents, that he would, quote, give anything for, quote, the heads of Tupac and Suge Knight. He said this in front of 45 people. Did Diddy do it? Why do I care about Diddy? Diddy is being prosecuted for all sorts of crazy crimes right now. But did he, on top of that, did he kill Tupac? Did he kill Pac? That'd be crazy, huh? It seems to me quite plausible that Diddy killed Tupac. And you know why? Not that I know very much about Mr. Diddy, not that I know very much about Mr. Tupac, other than that he was a ballet dancer, which is kind of weird. It's because in the long run, people don't usually just go a little bit bad. That's the thing. In order to believe that Diddy ordered the death of Tupac, you would have to believe that the guy who allegedly ran a major sex ring, including all sorts of underage crimes and involving all sorts of crazy orgies and blackmail and videotapes and just vile abuses. You're telling me that guy would do something really bad? Yeah, I am saying that because in the long run, people don't tend to go just a little bit bad. People don't tend to go just a little bit good. You tend to just keep going down the path you're on. So it's like a gateway drug. If you're a teenager, if you're a kid and you start smoking pot, if you start smoking pot by age 11, you're probably not going to stop at pot. You're probably going to be doing coke by age 15. You might be doing even harder drugs by age 18 or 20. If you're lucky, you're going to be in rehab by 22. If you're not lucky, you're going to be dead. Okay? People tend to go down paths. If, on the other hand, you're raised well, you're well-formed, you cultivate the habits of virtue, you are fastidious, and you are humble, and you demonstrate courage, and you're chaste, and you do all these things, it would be very odd. It would be very, very strange for you to end up, a meth-addled, brothel-going murderer. Just suddenly. That's not how human nature works. This is one of the jokes in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, is there's this character, what's his name? He was a priest who then the gang in Always Sunny, puts off the right path, and then he ends up being this homeless, drug-addled prostitute, all of these terrible things. I can't believe I forget his name, because I've seen probably every episode of Always Sunny. But the joke there is, that's not really how human nature works. Okay? And it's important in the way that we think about our personal lives and the way that we think about politics. All of the little decisions we make, all of the tiny little choices to do the right thing or do the wrong thing, they're not in isolation. They're just steps down various paths. So I don't know, to me, to raise your eyebrow and say, there's no way Diddy actually killed Tupac, is to say, you just don't understand how human nature works. I'm not saying he definitely killed Tupac. I'm just saying the kind of people who do bad stuff are much more inclined to do bad stuff. The kind of people who do good stuff are much more inclined to do good stuff. Sometimes you can have conversions and radical changes, but generally, if you're on the wrong path, be careful, because things can get very bad very quickly. One day, you're just making diss tracks and having weird sex parties. The next day, you're murdering a ballet dancing rapper. Speaking of famous feuds, Jim Acosta, an old foe of President Trump, has officially quit CNN. Here is his final broadcast.
It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Even if you have to get out your phone, record that message. I will not give in to the lies. I will not give in to the fear. Post it on your social media so people can hear from you too. I'll have more to say about my plans in the coming days, but until then, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It has been an honor to be welcomed into your home for all these years. That's the news. Reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta.
That's a really long way to say I'm angry that I got fired. Or rather, he was just moved to such a late time slot that he was offended and it looked embarrassing for him, so he quit. Some have also noted that Jim Acosta bears a passing resemblance to George Clooney. They've called him the Timu version of George Clooney. George Clowney, perhaps we could call him. What a ridiculous sign-off. He's saying that he's insinuating that Trump is a tyrant. He said, never give in to tyrants. A tyrant is a ruler who governs without the law, a ruler who governs out of caprice and who governs arbitrarily. Donald Trump, the defining feature of his first couple weeks in office, just his first week in office, is that he is enforcing the law again after 4 years of lawlessness. I don't really want to call Joe Biden a tyrant. I don't think he even rises to that level. But if you were going to call either of those guys a tyrant, it would be Biden. If you were to call Obama or Trump a tyrant, it would be Obama, because Obama admitted to surpassing the boundaries of the Constitution, to governing without the law. That's what Trump doesn't check any of those boxes. Furthermore, tyrants are often usurpers. How can you call Trump a usurper? Most people voted for him. Huge swaths of every demographic and the majority of Americans voted for that guy. Trump wins, Acosta loses. As Cocaine Mitch says, the winners go to Washington, the losers go home. Jim Acosta, he's taking the L. He's going home. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member and use code Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.